The room was a battlefield. Words sharper than knives. I sat rigid on the couch, my heart pounding like a drum as my classmates' voices clashed over me, each syllable a jab at who I was. At 17, I'd only just begun to claim the word non-binary, and now it felt like a target painted on my chest. It was a Friday night in our small Ohio town, and the high school debate club had somehow spiraled into a heated argument about LGBTQ rights. Our living room, usually a haven of quiet dinners and bad TV reruns, was now packed with 10 teenagers, a teacher, and my stepdad, Mark, who'd reluctantly agreed to host. I hadn't wanted my identity dissected in front of everyone but my best friend, Sarah, had insisted it'd be educational. Mark, 42, broad-shouldered and quiet, sat in his armchair, arms crossed, his flannel shirt creased from a long day at the auto shop. He wasn't my real dad. Dad left when I was 5, leaving Mom and me to piece things together. Mark came into our lives 3 years ago, a man of few words but steady hands. I never knew where he stood on things like this. He'd nod when Mom gushed about pride parades, but his silence always felt like a wall I couldn't climb. Elliot, you can't just choose to be neither male nor female. Jake, the debate team captain, said, his voice dripping with condescension. It's biology, not a feeling. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream that it wasn't a choice, that I'd spent nights staring at my reflection, trying to fit into a box that never felt right. But the word stuck, heavy as lead. Sarah jumped in, her voice fierce. Jake, you're ignoring lived experiences. Elliot's identity is valid, and science backs gender diversity. Jake scoffed, leaning back. Science. It's just trendy nonsense. Right, Mr. Thompson. All eyes turned to Mark. My stomach churned. I braced for him to stay silent, to let the room swallow me whole. But then he leaned forward, his blue eyes sharp. Jake, he said, his voice low but firm. You ever try living in someone else's skin? Elliot's not hurting you by being who they are. Maybe listen before you judge. The room went still. My jaw dropped. Mark, the man who barely spoke at dinner, had just shut down Jake like it was nothing. I caught his glance, a flicker of something pride, guilt, before he looked away. The debate stumbled on, but I barely heard it. My mind was on Mark, on the way his words had built a shield around me. For the first time, I wondered if I'd misjudged him. That night, after everyone left, I found him on the back porch, staring at the stars. The air was crisp, the kind of October chill that bit at your fingertips. I hesitated, then sat beside him on the creaky wooden steps. Thanks, I mumbled, my voice barely above a whisper. For earlier. He grunted, sipping his coffee. Didn't say anything that wasn't true. I wanted to ask why he'd spoken up, why he'd cared. But before I could, he set his mug down and looked at me, really looked at me, for maybe the first time since he'd married Mom. Elliot, he said, I know I'm not your dad. I'm not trying to be. But I see you. And I'm not going to let anyone tear you down. Not in my house. My chest ached. A mix of relief and something heavier. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. But as we sat there, the silence between us wasn't a wall, Anna Marie, it was a bridge. Fragile but real. The next morning, Mom was in the kitchen, humming as she flipped pancakes. Her blonde hair was tied back, her smile as warm as the skillet. You and Mark seemed cozy last night, she teased, winking at me. I shrugged, picking at a pancake. He's okay, I guess. She laughed, but her eyes softened. He's more than okay. Elliot, give him a chance. I didn't respond, but her words stuck. At school, the debate fallout lingered. Jake avoided me, but whispers followed me down the hall. Freak, someone muttered. I kept my head down, clutching my backpack straps like a lifeline. After school, I found a note slipped into my locker. Scrawled in Sharpie, "You don't belong here." My hands shook as I crumpled it. I didn't tell anyone, not Sarah, not Mom. But when I got home, Mark was in the garage, tinkering with his old Chevy. I don't know why I went to him, but I did. I held out the note, my voice cracking. This was in my locker. His jaw tightened as he read it. For a moment, I thought he'd crumple it too. Instead, he folded it carefully and tucked it into his pocket. "Anyone touches you, Elliot, you tell me," he said, his voice like gravel. "I'll handle it." I didn't know what handle it meant, but the steel in his eyes made me believe him. That night, I lay awake, replaying his words, wondering who this man was, this stepdad who'd gone from stranger to protector in a single day. But the note wasn't the end. The next week, things escalated. Jake and his buddies cornered me behind the gym, their laughter sharp and cruel. "You think your stepdad's gonna save you now?" Jake sneered, shoving me against the wall. My heart raced, but I stood tall. "He might," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Jake laughed, but before he could say more, a shadow loomed behind him. Mark. He didn't touch, Jake just stared, his presence enough to make the group scatter. "Let's go," he said to me, his voice calm but unyielding. As we walked to his truck, I realized something had shifted. Mark wasn't just Mom's husband anymore. He was someone I could trust, someone who saw me. But there was a heaviness in his eyes, a story he hadn't told. And I knew, somehow, that this was only the beginning. The truck rumbled down the quiet streets, the hum of the engine filling the silence between us. Mark's hands gripped the wheel, his knuckles white, but his face was unreadable. I wanted to ask what he was thinking, why he'd shown up at school like some kind of guardian angel. But the words felt too big, too raw. "You okay?" he finally asked, glancing at me. I nodded, though my chest still burned from Jake's words. "Yeah. Thanks for, you know." He grunted, eyes back on the road. Kids like that, they don't know what they're doing half the time. Doesn't make it right, though. I stared out the window, watching the blur of suburban houses. Mark's words from the debate echoed in my mind. "Maybe listen before you judge." I'd never heard him talk like that before. Like he'd thought about this stuff. Like it mattered to him. When we got home, Mom was waiting, her brow furrowed. "What happened?" she asked, looking between us. Mark handed her the crumpled note from my locker. Her face paled as she read it, and she pulled me into a hug that smelled of lavender and pancake batter. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" I didn't want to make it a big deal. I mumbled, pulling back. "It is a big deal," Mark said, his voice sharp. He caught himself, softening. "Elliot, you don't have to go through this alone." I didn't know how to respond. Mom and Mark exchanged a look, the kind that carried years of unspoken understanding. I felt like an outsider in my own home, caught between their bond and my own confusion. That night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. I was supposed to be doing homework, but their voices carried through the thin walls. "He's just a kid, Karen," Mark was saying. "He doesn't deserve this." "I know," Mom replied, her voice tight. "But what do we do? The school's not going to suspend Jake for a note." "I'll talk to the principal," Mark said. "And if that doesn't work, I'll deal with it myself." There was a pause. Then Mom's voice, softer. "Mark, You can't fix everything. You know that. I crept back to my room, my heart pounding. Mark's protectiveness was new, almost jarring. He'd always been the guy who fixed leaky faucets or mowed the lawn, not the one who fought my battles. But now, I couldn't stop wondering, why was he doing this? The next day at school, the air felt thick with tension. Sarah found me at lunch, her eyes wide. Did you hear? Jake's telling everyone your stepdad threatened him. What? I froze, my sandwich halfway to my mouth. Yeah, she said, lowering her voice. He's saying Mark showed up at his house last night. Told him to back off or else. My stomach dropped. Mark hadn't mentioned anything about going to Jake's house. Had he really done that? The thought made me uneasy. But part of me, a small, fierce part, felt a thrill. I confronted Mark that evening in the garage, where he was elbow deep in engine grease. Did you go to Jake's house? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He didn't look up. Who told you that? Does it matter? Did you? He wiped his hands on a rag, his movement slow. I had a talk with his dad, man to man. Told him to keep his kid in line. I stared at him, torn between gratitude and unease. You didn't have to do that. Maybe not, he said, meeting my eyes. But I wanted to. There it was again, that look, like he was carrying something heavy. I wanted to ask, to dig deeper. But my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Check Jake's ex account. I opened the app, my heart sinking. Jake had posted a blurry photo of Mark standing on his porch. Captioned, this guy thinks he can scare me. Watch your back. Elliot. The comments were brutal slurs, threats, memes mocking me and Mark. My hands shook as I showed him the post. His face darkened, but he didn't say anything, just handed the phone back. We'll handle it, he said, his voice low. Together. The word together hit me hard. I'd always felt alone, and this mom tried. But she didn't get it. Not really. Mark, though, he was starting to feel like an ally. Maybe even more. But the threats didn't stop. Over the next few days, more notes appeared in my locker, each one uglier than the last. Freak. You're not normal. Leave. I hid them from Mom. But Mark found one when he was cleaning out my backpack. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the paper like it was a bomb. Then he looked at me, his voice quiet but fierce. This ends now, Elliot. I didn't know what he meant, but the look in his eyes scared me, not because I thought he'd hurt me, but because I saw something new, pain. Deep, raw pain. That night, he sat me down at the kitchen table, Mom beside him. There's something you need to know, he said, his hands clasped tight. About why this matters to me. I held my breath, sensing the weight of what was coming. Mark took a deep breath, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the flannel, the man who'd been a stranger until now. Mark's hands trembled slightly as he spoke, a rare crack in his steady demeanor. The kitchen light cast shadows across his face, making him look older, more worn. Mom reached for his hand, her eyes soft but steady, urging him on. When I was your age, Elliot, he began, his voice low. I had a brother, Tommy. He was 2 years older. My best friend. He was different. Like you. My heart stuttered. I leaned forward, hanging on his words. Mark's gaze drifted to the window, like he was seeing something far beyond our suburban street. Tommy was gay, he said, the word heavy but clear. He didn't come out to anyone but me. Not at first. Our town was small, smaller than this one, and people didn't take kindly to different back then. He was scared, but he was bright. You know, like he lit up every room. I could hear the love in his voice, but also the pain, sharp and unhealed. Mom squeezed his hand, and he continued. When he was 19, he told our parents. They didn't take it well. Dad kicked him out, said he was a disgrace. I tried to stand up for him, but I was just a kid, didn't know how to fight back. Tommy left, and I didn't see him for years. Mark's voice cracked, and he paused, rubbing his eyes. I realized with a jolt that he was fighting tears. I'd never seen him cry, not even close. What happened to him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked at me, his eyes raw. He struggled, moved to Chicago, tried to make a life. But he was alone, and the world wasn't kind to people like him in the 90s. He took his own life when he was 25. The air left the room. Mom's eyes glistened, and I felt like I'd been punched. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there, the weight of his words settling over me like a heavy blanket. I didn't do enough, Mark said, his voice barely audible. I should have fought harder. Found him. Something. When I saw what you were going through. Elliot. It brought it all back. I can't let that happen again. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I'm not Tommy, I said, not sure if I was reassuring him or myself. I know, he said, meeting my eyes. But you're my kid now, and I'm not losing you. Those words hit like a tidal wave. My kid. I'd never thought of myself that way. Not with Mark. He was just there, a fixture in our house, not family. But now, something shifted. Mom spoke up, her voice gentle. Elliot, we're here for you. Both of us. But you need to tell us what's going on. Those notes. The threats, it's not okay. I nodded, but my mind was still on Mark's story. Tommy. A brother I'd never known about. A ghost who'd shaped the man in front of me. The next day, Mark drove me to school and walked me straight to the principal's office. He didn't say much, just stood there as I handed over the notes, my hand shaking. The principal, Mr. Carter, promised to investigate, but his tone was dismissive, like he'd seen this all before. As we left, Mark put a hand on my shoulder. If he doesn't fix this, I will, he said, his voice low but firm. I believed him, but the threats didn't stop. That afternoon, I found another note taped to my locker. Your stepdad can't save you forever. My stomach churned, but I didn't show it to Mark. I didn't want him to fight my battles alone. Instead, I went to Sarah. We sat in her bedroom, surrounded by posters of indie bands and fairy lights. We need to do something, I said, showing her the note. This is getting out of hand. She nodded, her eyes fierce. Let's expose them. Jake and his cronies, theory cowards. We can record them. Get proof. The idea scared me, but it also felt right. I was tired of hiding, tired of feeling small. Okay, I said, but we need a plan. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tommy, about Mark's pain, about the notes piling up like bricks around me. I wanted to be brave, not just for myself, but for Mark, for the brother he'd lost. The next morning, Sarah and I put our plan into action. She hid her phone in her backpack, set to record audio, and we lingered near the gym after school, where Jake and his friends usually hung out. My heart pounded as we waited, but I felt Mark's words in my chest. I'm not losing you. Sure enough, Jake showed up, his buddies trailing behind. Well, look who it is, he sneered, spotting me. Still hiding behind your stepdad. I stood my ground, my voice steady. I don't need to hide. Jake, I'm right here. He laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. Sarah gave me a nod, and I knew the recording was running. This was a tour chance to fight back. The air behind the gym was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle. Jake's smirk faltered as I stared him down, my heart hammering, but my feet planted firm. Sarah stood a few steps behind, her backpack slung over one shoulder, the hidden phone capturing every word. "You think you're tough now," Jake said, stepping closer. His buddies flanked him, their laughter like a pack of hyenas. "What's next? You gonna cry to your stepdad again?" "I don't need to cry to anyone," I said, my voice sharper than I expected. "You're the one who's scared, Jake," hiding behind notes and ex-posts. His face reddened, and for a moment, I thought he'd swing. But he just laughed. A forced, brittle sound. "You're a freak, Elliot. No one wants you here." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. Sarah's eyes met mine. A silent keep going. "Say it louder," I challenged. "Let everyone hear what a coward you are." One of his friends, a lanky kid named Tyler, muttered something under his breath, and Jake shoved him. "Shut up, man." Then he turned back to me, his eyes narrow. "You're gonna regret this." "Am I?" I said, stepping closer. "Or are you just mad because I'm not afraid of you anymore?" That did it. Jake lunged, not to hit me, but to shove me back, his hands slamming into my shoulders. I stumbled but caught myself, adrenaline surging. Sarah shouted, "Enough," and pulled out her phone, stopping the recording. "We got it," she said, holding the phone like a weapon. "Every word. Jake, you're done." His face paled, but he tried to play it off. "You think anyone cares about your stupid recording?" "They will when it's on X," Sarah shot back, "or when we show it to the principal." Jake's buddies backed off, muttering excuses, and he stood there, fists clenched, before storming away. My legs felt like jelly, but I'd done it. For the first time, I felt like I'd taken back a piece of myself. That night, I showed Mark the recording. We sat at the kitchen table, the phone between us, the audio playing Jake's venomous words. Mark's jaw tightened with every insult, but he didn't interrupt. When it finished, he leaned back, exhaling. "You're braver than I was at your age," he said, his voice quiet but proud. I shrugged, embarrassed. Sarah helped. A lot. "She's a good friend," he said, then paused. "But it's risky, Elliot. People like Jake don't back down easy." "I know," I said, "but I'm tired of being scared." He nodded, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "Tommy would have liked you." The mention of his brother hit me hard. I wanted to ask more, to understand the man who'd shaped Mark's heart. But Mom walked in, her face tired but warm. "What's going on?" she asked, sensing the weight in the room. We filled her in, playing the recording again. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "We're taking this to the principal tomorrow," she said, her voice firm. "No more waiting." The next day, we did just that. Mr. Carter listened to the recording, his face unreadable. He promised appropriate action, but warned that escalating things could make it worse. Mark's hand tightened on the armrest, but he stayed calm, his voice steady. "Escalating," he said. "My kid's being harassed. You do your job, or I'll make sure everyone knows you didn't." Mr. Carter flinched, and I felt a surge of pride. Mark wasn't just fighting for May, he was fighting for Tommy, too. But the victory was short-lived. By lunch, Jake had been suspended, but the whispers at school grew louder. Someone spray-painted "freak" on my locker. Sarah found me staring at it, my hand shaking. We'll fix this, she said, grabbing a rag from the janitor's closet. But as we scrubbed, I felt eyes on us classmates, teachers, everyone watching. That night, Mark found me on the porch, staring at the stars like he had that first night. You okay? He asked, sitting beside me. No, I admitted, my voice small. It's not stopping. He was quiet for a long moment, then said, It won't. Not right away. But you're stronger than they are. Elliot, you're stronger than I was. I looked at him, his face etched with lines of regret and resolve. What was Tommy like? I asked, needing to know. Mark smiled. A sad, distant thing. He was funny, always making up stupid songs to make me laugh. Loved old movies, the black and white ones. He wanted to be a writer, tell stories that mattered. I could see Tommy in my mind, a young man with Mark's eyes, carrying dreams too big for a small town. I wish I'd met him, I said. Me too, Mark said, his voice thick. He'd be proud of you. The words settled deep, a warmth against the cold fear. But as we sat there, my phone buzzed with a new X notification. Another post from Jake's account, this time with a photo of our house. The caption, You can't hide forever. The photo of our house stared back at me, its grainy edges sharp with menace. My hands shook as I showed Mark, the porch light casting harsh shadows across his face. He didn't say anything, just took the phone and studied the screen, his jaw set like stone. We're calling the police, he said finally, his voice low but unyielding. Mark. Wait, I said, panic rising. What if it makes things worse? Worse than this. He gestured at the phone, his eyes blazing. They're threatening you at home. Elliot. This stops now. Mom was already on the phone with the police when we walked inside, her voice steady but her hands trembling as she clutched the receiver. I felt like I was watching my life unravel, thread by thread. The police came, 2 officers with tired eyes and clipboards. They took the phone, the notes, the recording, and promised to look into it. Mark stood by the door, arms crossed, watching them leave with a look that said he didn't trust their promises. After they were gone, Mom pulled me into a hug. You're safe here, she whispered, but her voice wavered. I wanted to believe her, but the photo of our house felt like a violation, like Jake had reached through the screen and into our lives. Mark didn't sleep that night. I heard him pacing the house, checking locks, peering out windows. Around 2 a.m., I found him in the living room, a baseball bat leaning against the couch. You don't have to do this, I said, my voice small in the dark. He looked at me, his eyes tired but fierce. Yeah, I do. I didn't know what to say, so I sat beside him, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. For the first time, I saw him not as my stepdad, but as a man carrying ghosts, fighting to keep me from becoming one. The next day, school was a minefield. Jake's suspension didn't stop his friends. Tyler and another kid, Matt, cornered me in the bathroom, their voices low and threatening. You think you're safe because Jake's gone, Tyler said, shoving me against the sink. You're nothing. I froze, my heart pounding. But then I remembered Mark's words, you're stronger than they are. I pushed back, surprising Tyler enough to make him stumble. Back off, I said, my voice shaking but firm. They laughed but left, and I leaned against the wall, catching my breath. Sarah found me there, her eyes wide. Elliot, you okay? I nodded, but I wasn't. I was tired of the notes, the threats, the weight of being me. We need to end this, I said. For good. Sarah's eyes lit up. I have an idea. The school's hosting that diversity assembly next week. We could use the recording. Show everyone what Jake's been doing. The thought terrified me, standing in front of the whole school, exposing myself even more. But I was done hiding. Let's do it, I said. We spent the weekend planning, editing the recording to make it clear and concise. Sarah's older brother, a tech whiz, helped us sync it to a slideshow with screenshots of the notes and Jake's ex-posts. It felt like building a case, like we were detectives in some gritty drama. Mark helped too, in his quiet way. He didn't say much, but he brought us snacks, checked our work, even suggested adding a quote from a local anti-bullying law. Make it undeniable, he said, his voice steady. Monday came, and the assembly loomed. I barely slept, my stomach churning with nerves. Mark drove me to school, his truck a familiar comfort. You don't have to do this, he said as we parked. But if you do, I'm right here. I nodded, clutching my backpack. Thanks, Mark. The assembly was in the gym, the bleachers packed with students and teachers. Sarah and I stood backstage, our slideshow ready. My hands shook as the principal introduced the diversity program, his voice droning about inclusion. When it was our turn, Sarah took the mic first, her voice clear. This isn't just about diversity. It's about what happens when we don't stand up for each other. The slideshow started, and Jake's voice filled the gym, his words from the recording echoing. You're a freak, Elliot. No one wants you here. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The screenshots followed, each one a punch notes. Ex-posts. The photo of our house. I stepped forward, my voice trembling but growing stronger. This is what I've been dealing with. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I'm me. And I'm not going anywhere. The gym was silent. Then a few kids clapped. Then more. Sarah grabbed my hand, and I felt tears prick my eyes. But as I looked out, I saw Mark in the back, his face proud but strained, like he was reliving something. After the assembly, the principal called us to his office. Jake's suspension was extended, and Tyler and Matt faced detention. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. That night, Mark sat me down again. You did good today, he said. But this fight, it's not over. You need to know that. I nodded, my heart heavy but hopeful. I know, but I'm ready. He smiled. A real one this time. That's my kid. The weeks after the assembly felt like a fragile truce. The notes stopped, and Jake's friends kept their distance. But the air at school still crackled with tension. I caught whispers in the halls, sideways glances that cut deeper than words. But I walked taller, Sarah by my side, Mark's words echoing, "You're stronger than they are." At home, things were different too. Mark wasn't just the guy who fixed things anymore, was someone I talked to. Really talked to. One night, while Mom was at book club, we ordered pizza and sat in the living room. The TV muted. Tell me more about Tommy, I said, picking at a slice. Mark's eyes softened, but there was a weight to them. He was stubborn. Like you. Always had to do things his way. Loved musicus to sneak into clubs to hear bands play. Said it made him feel free. I smiled, imagining a young Tommy, defiant and alive. What was his favorite song? Bohemian Rhapsody, Mark said without hesitation. He'd sing it at the top of his lungs. Didn't care who heard. I laughed, and for a moment, the room felt lighter. But then Mark's face grew serious. He'd be proud of what you did at that assembly, Elliot. Standing up like that, it's what he always wanted to do. The compliment warmed me, but it also stung. I wondered if I was carrying Tommy's fight, if Mark saw his brother in me. School wasn't all bad now. Sarah and I started a small LGBTQ club. Just a few kids meeting in the library after school. We talked about our lives, our fears, our hopes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One kid, a shy freshman named Riley, came out as trans during a meeting, their voice barely above a whisper. I hugged them, remembering how alone I'd felt just months ago. But the peace didn't last. One evening, I got a call from Sarah. Her voice panicked. "Elliot, check X. Now." I opened the app and froze. Someone had created a fake account under my name, posting vile messages and doctored photos of me in humiliating poses. The comments were a flood of hate, some from kids I didn't even know. My hands shook as I showed Mom and Mark. Mom's face crumpled, but Mark's was like stone. "This is cyberbullying," he said, his voice tight. "We're not letting this slide." He called the police again, but they said tracing the account would take time. Mark wasn't satisfied. He grabbed his laptop and started digging, his fingers flying over the keys. I didn't know he was tech-savvy, but there he was, pulling up IP addresses and tracing patterns like a detective. "Mark, what are you doing?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. "Finding out who's behind this," he said, not looking up. "I took a few computer courses in the Army. Comes in handy." I stared at him, realizing how little I knew about the man who'd become my protector. "You were in the Army?" He nodded, eyes still on the screen. 8 years. Left after Tommy, after I needed a fresh start. The pieces of Mark's life were starting to fit together, each one revealing a man shaped by loss and resilience. By midnight, he'd traced the account to a VPN, but it was a dead end. He slammed the laptop shut, frustration etched on his face. "We'll get them," he said, his voice fierce. "I promise." The next day, I skipped school. Mom insisted, saying I needed a break. Mark took the day off too, and we ended up in the garage, working on his Chevy. It was his way of keeping me close, I think, of making sure I was okay. As we tightened bolts, he started talking, unprompted. When I lost Tommy, I shut down. Didn't talk to anyone for years. Not even your mom when we first met. But you remind me why I need to keep going. I stopped, wrench in hand, my throat tight. "I'm not going anywhere, Mark." He looked at me, his eyes soft but fierce. "Good. Because I'm not either." That afternoon, Sarah came over with news. "Riley thinks they know who made the account," she said, her voice low. "It's not Jake, it's Tyler. He's been bragging about it." My heart sank. Tyler had always been Jake's shadow, quieter but just as cruel. Mark overheard, his face darkening. "We need proof," he said. "No more games." Sarah nodded. "I've got an idea, but it's risky." Her plan was simple but bold. Confront Tyler at school, record him admitting it, and take it to the police. I hesitated, but Mark's voice echoed in my head. "You're my kid now." I was done running. "Let's do it," I said, my voice steady. Sarah's plan was a gamble, but it felt like our last shot. We mapped it out in her bedroom, surrounded by empty soda cans and crumpled notes. The idea was to catch Tyler alone, get him talking, and record him confessing to the fake X account. My stomach churned at the thought, but I was tired of being a target. Mark insisted on being nearby. "I'm not letting you do this without backup," he said, his voice firm. I didn't argue. His presence felt like armor. The next day, we set the trap. Sarah texted Tyler from a burner account, pretending to be a random classmate who knew what he did and wanted to meet behind the school to talk. Tyler, cocky as ever, took the bait. At 3 p.m., I stood by the bleachers, my phone in my pocket, recording. Sarah was hidden nearby, her phone ready too. Mark waited in his truck, parked just out of sight, but close enough to step in if things went south. Tyler showed up, his lanky frame slouched, his eyes darting. "Who's this?" he snapped, looking around. "Me," I said, stepping forward. "We need to talk about the X account." "Tyler." His face twisted. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "You made it. You posted those pictures. Why?" He laughed, but it was nervous, shaky. "You think you're smart. Huh? You and your stepdad, playing hero. Just admit it." I pressed, stepping closer. "You're not as clever as you think." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he'd bolt. But then he smirked, leaning in. "Yeah, I made the account. So what? You deserve it. Freak." My heart leaped we had it. But before I could respond, he grabbed my shirt, yanking me forward. "You think this changes anything?" "Let go," I said, my voice low but firm. He didn't. Instead, he shoved me. Hard. I stumbled, catching myself against the bleachers. Sarah shouted, bursting from her hiding spot, phone in hand. "We got you. Tyler." Tyler froze, realizing he'd been caught. But before he could react, Mark was there, his presence like a storm rolling in. He didn't touch Tyler, just stood between us, his voice calm but deadly. "Walk away, kid. Now." Tyler's bravado crumbled. He muttered something and ran, his sneakers slapping the pavement. Mark turned to me, his eyes scanning for injuries. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, my voice shaky but relieved. "We got him." Sarah played the recording, Tyler's confession clear as day. We sent it to the police that evening, along with everything else: the notes, the X posts, the photo of our house. The officer, a new one this time, promised a thorough investigation. That night, Mom, Mark, and I sat in the living room, the weight of the day heavy between us. Mom looked exhausted, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "I'm proud of you, Elliot," she said, her voice soft. "But I'm scared, too." "I know," I said, glancing at Mark. "But I'm not alone." He nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Never." The police moved faster this time. Tyler was suspended, and his parents were called in. The fake X account was taken down, and the school issued a public apology at the next assembly. It wasn't perfect. Some kids still glared, still whispered, but it felt like a turning point. Mark and I started spending more time together. He taught me how to change a tire, how to throw a punch without breaking my thumb. Small things, but they felt big, like he was passing down pieces of himself. One evening, as we worked on the Chevy, he started talking about Tommy again, unprompted. He used to say courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being scared and doing it anyway. I looked at him, grease smudged on my hands. "You think I'm courageous?" He smiled, a real one that reached his eyes. "I know you are." The word stayed with me, a quiet strength. But the fight wasn't over. A week later, Sarah got a tip that Jake was back, planning something big to get even. She didn't know what, but the rumor was enough to set my nerves on edge. I told Mark, expecting him to call the police again. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes steady. "Whatever comes, we face it together. Deal?" "Deal," I said, my heart full. The rumor about Jake hung over me like a storm cloud. Sarah's intel was vague, just whispers that he was planning something big to retaliate for his suspension. I tried to focus on school, on the LGBTQ club, on the fragile normalcy we'd built. But the fear lingered, sharp and cold. Mark sensed it. He didn't push, but he started driving me to and from school every day. His truck a steady presence. One morning, as we idled in the parking lot, he handed me a small, worn notebook. Found this in storage, he said, his voice quiet. It was Tommy's. I opened it, my fingers tracing the faded ink. Pages of poems, song lyrics, and scattered thoughts, all in a messy, looping scrawl. One line stood out. Love is the only truth worth fighting for. Keep it, Mark said. He'd want you to have it. I clutched the notebook, feeling Tommy's spirit in its pages. It was like a piece of Mark's heart, handed over without hesitation. Thanks, I whispered, my voice thick. That afternoon, Sarah and I met in the library. Our club, now 6 members strong. Riley, the trans freshman, had started opening up, their shy smile a small victory. But as we talked, Sarah's phone buzzed with a new post from an anonymous account. It was a photo of me at the assembly, my face twisted with emotion. Captioned, Elliot's lies ruin lives. Time to end this. My stomach dropped. It's Jake, I said, my voice barely audible. Sarah nodded, her jaw tight. We need to be ready. That night, I showed Mark the post. He didn't explode like I expected, just sat there, his eyes hard, calculating. This kid doesn't know when to quit, he said. But we're not playing his game. He called the police again, but they said the account was untraceable without more evidence. Mark's frustration was palpable, but he kept it in check, his focus on me. You stay close, he said. No going anywhere alone. The next day, Jake was back at school. His suspension lifted. He didn't approach me, but his smirk was a silent threat. I felt exposed, like every step was a risk. Sarah stuck by me, her presence a lifeline, but the fear was suffocating. That evening, Mark took me to a diner on the edge of town. Just the two of us. The neon sign buzzed outside, and the smell of fries filled the air. We need to talk, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. About Jake, I asked, my stomach twisting. About you, he said, his eyes steady. You've been fighting this battle like a warrior, Elliot. But you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. Your mom's here. Sarah, Riley, the other C of E got people. I looked down at my hands. Tommy's notebook tucked in my jacket pocket. I'm scared. Mark, what if this never stops? He leaned forward, his voice low but fierce. It stops because we make it stop. Not by fighting dirty like Jake, but by being better. By being you. His words hit deep, a reminder of why I'd kept going. I nodded, a small spark of courage igniting. Okay. The next morning, it happened. I was walking to class when Jake and Tyler blocked my path, their faces smug. You think you won, Jake said, his voice low. This isn't over. Before I could respond, a teacher appeared, breaking it up. But Jake's words lingered, a promise of more to come. I told Mark that night, and he didn't hesitate. We're ending this, he said, grabbing his keys. He drove to Jake's house, me in the passenger seat, my heart pounding. But instead of confronting Jake, he knocked on the door and asked for his parents. Jake's dad, a tired-looking man in a polo shirt, listened as Mark laid it all out, the notes, the posts, the threats. I lost someone to hate like this. Mark said, his voice steady but raw. I'm not losing Elliot. Your son needs to stop, or we'll take this as far as it goes. Jake's dad looked shaken, promising to handle it. As we left, Mark put a hand on my shoulder. Sometimes, you fight by showing people the truth. The next day, Jake was pulled from school. His parents enrolled him in an online program, and the ex-post stopped. The whispers at school faded, replaced by a cautious respect. The LGBTQ club grew, and Riley started wearing a trans pride pin. Their smile brighter. One night, as we sat on the porch, Mark handed me a coffee, his eyes on the stars. You did it, Elliot, he said. You fought, and you won. No, I said, clutching Tommy's notebook. We did. He smiled, and for the first time, I saw peace in his eyes. Tommy's ghost was still there, but so was I, alive and fighting. And Mark, my stepdad, was the one who'd shown me how.